Hello everyone, Lee McCauley here again, and in this video I want to discuss the dangers of carbohydrate consumption. First off, I must admit carbohydrates can be an important component of a healthy diet, as they are capable of providing the body with quick energy, especially if you're an athlete or you're someone who's using a lot of brain power, you're about to sit an exam or something of that sort. However, if you live a sedentary lifestyle, like many of us do, I'm quite sedentary myself, excessive consumption of foods rich in carbohydrates, especially refined carbohydrates, so your sugars, can have significant negative impacts on your health. Excessive carbohydrate consumption can lead to changes in insulin response, unstable blood sugar levels, and an increased risk of developing type 2 diabetes, and of developing a condition known as reactive hypoglycemia, which I will discuss later in the video. First off, I want to discuss the complex relationship between carbohydrate consumption and insulin response. Now, this is quite complex at a physiological level, so just bear with me for a bit. When you eat a meal rich in carbohydrates, so your breads, your cereals, your sugars, these carbohydrates are broken down by enzymes into glucose, typically by this amylase enzyme. When the glucose is absorbed into your bloodstream, this leads to a rise in blood sugar levels. So you absorb more sugar into your blood, the sugar level increases. Okay? So in response to this increase in blood sugar levels, the pancreas releases insulin. Now, insulin is responsible for the storage of glucose into cells. Now, regularly consuming carbohydrate-rich meals, particularly those that are rich in refined carbohydrates, such as simple sugars and refined cereals, can lead to significant increases in blood sugar levels. So to compensate, your pancreas has to produce large amounts of this hormone called insulin to manage the sudden influx of glucose into the blood. In the long term, this will lead the body to develop a tolerance to insulin. This is simply known as insulin resistance. You would have heard of this before. This is where your body stops responding to that insulin hormone, and therefore blood sugar levels increase. Now, insulin resistance plays a critical part in the etiology of type 2 diabetes. Now, etiology here, in this context, basically just means the development of type 2 diabetes. Which is a chronic disease that is extremely debilitating and really it shouldn't exist. Unlike type 1 diabetes, which is genetic, type 2 diabetes is strongly influenced by lifestyle factors, these factors that we can hypothetically control. So essentially, when the body becomes resistant to insulin's effects, it requires more and more insulin to keep blood sugar levels stable. Now, this puts unbelievable stress on your pancreas. Your pancreas has to work very hard. Which ultimately will lead to the pancreas's eventual inability to produce insulin sufficiently to the levels that the body requires. This in turn will eventually lead to chronic high blood sugar levels, so elevated hypoglycemia, which is elevated blood sugar. And this can result in glucose toxicity. Now, glucose can be quite toxic and it can destroy blood vessels when it accumulates in the blood. Now, glucose toxicity can also lead to additional damage to pancreatic cells, so those cells of the pancreas, exacerbating the already chronic condition. Guys, it's really this simple. Consumption of excessive carbohydrates can significantly increase your risk of developing not only insulin resistance, but type 2 diabetes as well. Okay guys, now let's discuss the relationship between carbohydrates and reactive hypoglycemia. Now, for some context, hypo means low, glyce refers to glucose, and emia means blood. So this is reactive low blood sugar levels. Okay, so reactive hypoglycemia is a little known condition. A lot of people aren't aware of it. A lot of people suffer without having a proper diagnosis. Okay, it is characterized by abnormally low blood sugar levels after the consumption of a carbohydrate-rich meal. Now, this is paradoxical, as you would assume after consuming a meal rich in carbohydrates, your blood glucose levels would increase and you would have hyperglycemia, or at least higher blood sugar levels. What's happening here is the response to the carbohydrate meal. Essentially, your body starts panicking and produces excessive amounts of insulin. Now, this rapidly decreases your blood sugar levels, putting you in a hypoglycemic state, so a state of low blood sugar. This will often result in symptoms of shakiness, weakness, feeling faint, and you'll feel quite fatigued. You might have felt these symptoms, the symptoms of hypoglycemia, if you've gone for an extended time without a meal. So you've been in a fasted state. Those are the symptoms of hypoglycemia. Now, you don't want to be having these after you just ate a meal. That doesn't really make sense. And that's what reactive hypoglycemia is. So unfortunately, most people, in an attempt to increase their blood sugar levels, they consume more and more carbohydrates, which makes sense, right? You would think, okay, my blood sugar levels are low. I need to eat more sugar to increase them. But this leads to a vicious cycle of unstable blood sugar levels. So you eat more carbohydrates, okay, your blood sugar levels increase, your body then panics again, produces too much insulin, drops it low, and then because it's low, you eat more carbohydrates, so on, so on, okay? So to counteract this condition, I recommend you consume frequent meals that are rich in protein and fats, okay? So you source your energy from proteins and fats rather than carbohydrates. Now, both of these are quite satiating, and protein's quite thermic. So there's a lot of benefits to, consuming a high protein, high fat diet, your ketogenic diet, basically. You may also want to carry glucose tablets as a last resort if you have already reached a state of extremely low blood sugar levels. So if you're fasting for an extreme amount of time and you panic, you realize your blood sugar levels are low, if you're carrying like a glucose tablet or some jelly beans or something, as a last resort, you can use that to quickly increase your blood sugar levels. Then follow that by consuming protein and fat-rich meal. Okay guys, that's all for this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you learnt about the dangers of carbohydrates. Not trying to scare you off too much, but just something to keep in mind before your next meal. Thank you all for sort of interacting with my content recently, and I hope that you all like, subscribe, and comment on this video. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next video.